Hello, everybody. This is Vince Russo for WrestlingInc.com. I'm here with a new feature called Fanning the Flames, where I bring on a special guest. We have a little conversation about a hot topic, maybe something that's a little controversial, not a long, full-blown, winded interview. How'd you get into the business? Yada, yada, yada. Give me a break. This is about hot topics, and I'm starting it with the one guy that I love more than anybody else I met in the wrestling business. I refer to him as the brother I never had. I'm talking about the one and only Ed Ferrara. Ed, how you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Wait, you don't want to talk about how I got into the business? You don't want to know about that?
How many times are we going to talk about that, Ed?
Too many times.
Now, Ed, there's a lot we're going to talk about. Before we get into it, though, I want to get your take on this, obviously as a writer. And listen, Ed is a writer, not these make-believe wrestling writers, the 30, 40, 50 of them, whatever is it, WWE nowadays. Ed is a legitimate writer, had a writing career, writing for television, prior to going to the WWE. Ed, I know you're a huge fan of comic books, Star Wars, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot of chatter today. The Star Wars preview is going to play during Monday Night Football tonight. Tickets go on sale midnight tonight, even though the movie isn't coming out for a couple of months. What's your take on this, bro? Listen, the first 3 were great. I think the second 3 were a disappointment. Is this a rolling of the dice here, Ed, or should they be taking a chance with the new Star Wars?
I'm glad they're taking a chance with the new Star Wars because I want to see, I want something to live up to the promise that the original trilogy had. I thought that the prequel trilogy was it was painful to watch, and it just kind of, for me, just sullied the whole memory of Star Wars to the point where I didn't care if there was any more Star Wars movies. Now, seeing J.J. Abrams involved with it and seeing what I've seen so far and hearing what I'm hearing, I'm kind of getting a little hopeful, and I'm kind of getting a little excited for it. So I'm really, really, really hoping that he does a good job with this. And from what I've seen, it seems like his heart is in the right place, and he seems to be heading in the right direction with it. If that's the case, it's going to revitalize the entire franchise for decades to come. I mean, they have got huge plans for this franchise. It's never going to end. So if as long as they keep the quality up, it's kind of like the way I feel about the Marvel Universe movies. As long as they keep the quality up, they can keep making these movies forever, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll keep going to them. I'm hoping I'll be able to say the same thing about the Star Wars movies after this new one shows up in December.
Now, Ed, you already used a word that I didn't know. Is this going to be one of these interviews where you drop these words throughout the interview that I don't know, I don't have a clue? You use the word sullied. The only Sully I know is from Monsters, Inc., bro. Are you going to speak my language during this interview?
I don't think so. I think I'm going to be throwing out some big words, so you better have your thesaurus handy.
You
know what a thesaurus is?
Yeah, I do. Can you teach me what sullied means, though, so I could walk away with learning something from this interview?
It means to dirty, to grime up, to make something, to dirty something, to make it impure, to sully it.
Wouldn't that be to soil it?
It's kind of like that. Yes, it's very similar to
big that. Shooter. Why you always got to be the big shooter, bro? All right, Ed, listen, catch people up on what you're doing today, because this is going to segue right into what this Fanning the Flames is about. Go ahead.
Oh, I wonder what we're going to be talking about. So, what am I doing today? I'm a university professor, and I teach writing for television, and I teach it at Full Sail University.
Okay.
So I wonder, could that have something to do with what we're going to be talking about here? Full Sail maybe be a linchpin around which all this is going to revolve, huh? Linchpin, another. Got that?
I know, Elizabeth. Ed,
okay, all right, okay, good.
It's funny because, yes, that is what we're going to talk about, but, while I'm sitting here and you're telling everybody you work at Full Sail University, I don't know what it is, Ed, but, what's coming to my mind is when somebody asks you the question, what's a draw, Ed? Remember that? Remember what's a draw? Why is that coming to my mind? That's not where we're going. That's not what bro, why do, once a week, do I always think about what's a draw, Ed?
Oh man, because that was just I think that was the defining moment for our working relationship that day. And it was all downhill from there.
It was my two great.
Have you ever? Do you tell what this story? Does anybody know what this is, or is this
Bro,
just
listen.
me and you?
Everybody knows every story about you. They know you putting your trinkets in a box when the paycheck didn't come. I've told that a million times. What is a draw, Ed? I've told absolutely a million times, bro. But you know what, Ed? I'll be honest with you. Before we get into our fanning the flames, I would love to hear you tell what is a draw, Ed.
What, the story?
Yeah, so people, bro, this is what I tell people all the time. You know what I tell people, bro? I tell people ask Ed. Because for some reason, like, everybody hates Vince Russo, and that's fine, but everybody loves Ed Ferrara. So, like, when I'm telling the truth about something, I always say, ask Ed. You'll believe Ed. You're not going to believe me, so ask Ed. So, Ed, please explain to us what is a draw, Ed.
All right. The story is, and this goes back to the days when you and I were working in TNA. I think we had a good about 40 TNA before they brought in Eric and Hulk. So we didn't have a chance to do anything that we wanted to do, and it was one of the first meetings we were having with Eric, and it was me, you, Matty Conway, Eric. I think that was it.
Yeah.
And we were just going back and forth on what Eric and Hulk's plans were for the revitalizing and reinvigorating the TNA brand. And we were talking about one talent after another wanted to bring in. And finally, when we got to the Nasty Boys, I guess I couldn't restrain myself anymore. And I made a comment about how the Nasty Boys wouldn't be a draw, and why were we bending over backwards to fit them in the show? And Eric stopped the meeting and stared at me with daggers and said, "What's a draw, Ed? What is a draw?" And my response was, not sags and knobs. At this point in the game, it's 2000. What year was it? 2009 at that point. Yeah, not the Nasty Boys at that point. Nothing against them. Great guys, but at that point, we had bigger fish to fry than figuring out how we fit knobs and sags in on the card.
Yeah. Well, not for anything, and I don't want to go off on a tangent because I do have a topic I want to discuss. But in a recent WWE interview that Eric Bischoff was paid for, he made the statement that my ideas made his look like Shakespeare. Just so you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't bring myself to watch those things.
Yeah.
The revisionist history. Yeah. That's just it just gets me sick to my stomach.
Exactly. But I don't even want to talk about you. That could be another 2-hour conversation. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk to you about something that's a hot topic. And this isn't going to be a debate or an argument or anything else like this. I want an educated opinion. I want to get my eyes open. I can't rely on these smarts on the internet that they've there's a certain product that was put together and created just for them, so they've embodied it. I want to actually talk to somebody with a brain, and that would be you. I think I have 3 theories, bro. I'm into the what's the word I'm looking for? Now you got me all over the place here.
Conspiracy?
I got 3 conspiracy theories there. Thank you very much. Number 1, Andy Kaufman's alive, I believe. Number 2, as I've stated many times before, Bubba Ray is not dating Velvet Sky. That's a work. And number 3, my friend Ed Ferrara is working at Full Sail University as a teacher, which leads me to believe he may be working behind the scenes of NXT. Is there any truth to that whatsoever?
There is no truth to that whatsoever. You got me. No, there's no truth to that whatsoever. I just happened to be working in the same place, and actually, it was kind of like I thought twice about it when I was applying. I was going, oh my God, I can't escape this company. I can't get away from this company. But I just happened to be teaching in the same place where I've never even been to one of their tapings. No interest. I'd rather watch from the comfort of my own home. But yeah.
No, no, no. I've got to shoot your conspiracy theory down. I think you're right on the money with Velvet and Bubba, and I think you might be on the money with Andy Kaufman. But this one, no good.
Okay, all right, I buy that. I believe you. But Ed, now let's have our discussion. And here's what it is. Listen, from what I do, because, I cover wrestling, that's what I do now on VinceRussoBrand.com. People kept saying to me years ago, you got to watch NXT, got to watch NXT, got to watch NXT. Yes, I did have to watch NXT as part of my job. I saw one of the big shows, and then I followed that with 3 regular episodes. So I probably watched about 4 in a row. I'll be honest with you, Ed. Watching those 4 did not make me a fan of the product. It did not make me want to continue watching. Bro, the older I get, my attention span is shorter and shorter. If I don't want to watch something and I don't enjoy it, I'm probably not going to watch it. So after sampling NXT, I was not a fan of it simply because it wasn't Vince Russo's brand of wrestling. Bro, everybody who knows, I was raised on characters. I was raised on storylines. It's what we did at WWE. The wrestling matches were always secondary to me. I'm sorry, they were. And to me, that's what NXT relied on, was wrestling. And, therefore, it wasn't my cup of tea. But every interview I read, we touched upon this briefly, you're a big fan of NXT. And I wanted to bring you on here. Like I said, bro, I have an open mind. And if Ed Ferrara is a big fan of NXT, then maybe I'm missing something. So I want to understand, hear it directly from you. What is it that you like about the NXT product?
Okay. To talk about what I like about the NXT product, I got to talk a little bit about what I dislike about the main roster product. First of all, we've discussed this to death. 3 hours, death. 3 hours is way too long for anything, and you're gonna lose audience. You're gonna lose people. Are gonna fall off. That's 3 hours of a week product is double death. So that's one of the things I think they've got going against them with the main roster is they don't have the creativity, the storytelling, the characters that will float a 3 hour long show. The NXT show, first of all, not to damn it with faint praise, because I have a lot of solid praise to heap on the product, but hey, it's not a 3 hour show. So right there, you're onto something. It's a 1 hour show. It's a simpler product. They focus on what's going on, and because the action is so, to me, it's some of the best wrestling on television right now. That's what I get excited about, because as far as the entertainment aspect of the main roster show, it's falling flat. It's not entertaining. So if it's not entertaining and it doesn't have a top-notch action in the ring, I mean, that's the product that I think that has the bigger problems. With NXT, they're not going over the top with their storylines. They're not doing a wild ass storyline. A lot of the stuff like what we used to do, or even what they do on the main roster. But what they are doing is they're finding that ability for the audience to suspend their disbelief. They're focusing on the action. They're focusing on the matches. They're focusing on the championships, and that's where the stories that they have are spinning out of. They're mini stories, but they're nailing it, and they're making it a product where I can believe in these characters that they have because they are believable, whereas I can't believe anything going on. It's true either, but you also have to suspend your disbelief, and it's really hard to do that with the main roster product when the storyline and the storytelling is so very weak and kind of thrown together sometimes.
Okay, see, Ed, but I appreciate that and I hear that, but with that being said, let me throw this at you. I believe a lot of people are fans of NXT because the bar has been so lowered. So now, they're looking for something new. They're looking for something different, and whatever it is, they're going to put it over because they don't enjoy what's going on the main stage with the WWE now. So, Ed, I want to ask you this: in all truth, in all honesty, say the product today with the WWE that you were watching on Monday nights, say that was the equivalent of the Attitude Era. Say, it was just as popular. It was a brand of wrestling that you enjoyed and that you were entertained by and that you looked forward to. If you still had that on Monday nights, would you even be giving this NXT product a second look? Or are we looking at NXT and praising NXT because the WWE is so bad right now? Good question, right, bro? Put over the question, bro.
That's a really good question. That's a really good question, kid. Really. I mean, you do make a really good point. But where I think you're a little off is I wouldn't compare NXT right now to, especially on a personal level, I wouldn't compare it to the Attitude Era. Here's the comparison I would make. The main roster right now is the equivalent of the pre-Attitude Era, where you had your TL Hoppers and your Goons and your Mantors and stuff like that. It's that era that the Attitude Era kind of remedied. And to me, and this is from a personal level, because at that point when that stuff was going on the Raw roster, on the WWE roster, they lost me. They lost my interest. They lost my passion. I just didn't care anymore because the product didn't deserve my concern. At the same time, that was when, and this is where you and I also are a little different, that was when I discovered ECW. And that's when I discovered what Paul E was doing, and that filled that niche that I was missing, that the main roster wasn't filling for me. The main roster wasn't entertaining me. It was embarrassing to watch at that point. But what I got when I watched ECW was, it reminded me what I loved about wrestling. It reminded me about the passion that the fans can have for the product, because that passion came out of me for that product. So that's what I see. And ECW, I think, had a big hand in the way that the product in general was booked going forward. I know you didn't watch it, but I did, and I personally was influenced. A lot of what I brought to the storytelling table when we were working together, a lot of that was influenced by ECW on my standpoint. And I think that's what we got here. And I think that NXT is going to help the product to evolve into something that the audience can get behind once again and get passionate about. What they have right now, there's nothing to be passionate about. But I think that the audience they'll find it through kind of adjusting their sights based on what they're doing in NXT and the audience's responses to that.
Okay, Ed, but let's look at this now. Okay, I hear you loud and clear, but bro, you know me. I was always a fact guy. I was always a number guy. I was never an opinion guy. I think opinions don't matter. There's concrete evidence what draws in wrestling and what doesn't. Okay, Ed, I think there's enough of a sample now as far as guys and gals that have gone over to the WWE, okay? And, bro, we could probably name a dozen NXT guys and girls that have gone over now. There's been a sampling. Okay, now, bro, with this infusion of NXT talent into the WWE, the numbers tell us, bro, that ratings continue to go down. So when we talk about the casual audience, the mass audience, not the wrestling fan that's going to watch every single wrestling show as long as the name's in the title. We're talking about that casual television viewer, okay? We still see with all this NXT talent going over there, the numbers continue to go down. So my thing is then, like what's the point then? If NXT is supposed to be a feeder system into the WWE, as these NXT talents are going into the WWE, the numbers continue to go down. That tells me that the casual wrestling fans don't care about these NXT wrestlers, which is part of my problem, Ed, because everybody I see on NXT, everybody that's gone from NXT to the WWE, in my opinion, they look like regular guys. They don't look like stars. They don't look like they're larger than life. And I think the casual wrestling fan want wrestlers to look like wrestlers. That's what they grew up on. That's what they liked. That's what they enjoyed. When guys are, 200 pounds and they're wrestlers, I don't think there's any casual wrestling fan that's ever going to take that seriously.
Well, I mean, I see what you're saying, and yeah.
Can you put over the question again? Put over the question first.
Well, that question was good. Not quite as good as the question before that, but it still was a very impressive question.
Thank you.
The guys at NXT, yeah, generally.
I don't want to interrupt you. Ed, is Finn Balor going to be the next Hulk Hogan? Is Finn Balor going to be the next Randy Savage? Is Finn Balor going to be the next Junkyard Dog? He's a regular guy, bro.
I disagree with you. Especially Balor. Balor's got, to me, an Undertaker-esque entrance. He's got one of the best entrances in the business right now, and he conducts the entire audience. And he does that whether it's at the 400-seat Full Sail Arena or if he's in the Barclays Center. But here's the thing, and here's where I agree with what you're saying, because they're bringing all these guys up to the main roster and they're not moving the needle. But that's because the booking is for shit these days. It's not, the storytelling is terrible. They're bringing these guys up to the main roster and then they're not utilizing them well. They're not putting them in creative stories. The stories that they're putting them in a lot of the times are embarrassing, or they're demeaning, or they're stories that don't make these guys, the stories don't make the guys look like stars. So I wouldn't fault the talent, and I don't fault NXT for the point where when they go up to the main roster, they're not used well. That's the problem. They're not being presented as stars. They're not being presented as impressive specimens. The guys who are on top in NXT go up to the main roster, and they're lucky if they get above mid-card status. And the ones that do get above mid-card status, they're pretty quick to smack them back down to mid-card status. See Kevin Owens. So the problem for me is not that there's a problem with the talent or the breed of talent. It's the usage, and I think that it's a testament to that they're creatively bereft these days, and they have a hard time putting on an entertaining product. I'm not going to fault Finn Balor and Neville and Kevin Owens for not moving the needle when I myself am watching the storylines that some of these guys are involved in, and I'm cringing. I love the talent. And I know what they have to offer, and they're not getting the chance to offer that on the main roster because, well, that's what they did in NXT. But, that's not how we do things up here. So they're changing them, and it's not working. So to me, don't blame them for creative falling asleep at the wheel and not delivering an intriguing and enticing product. And that's what the problem is. Not the guys, it's the product and it's the creative.
Well, see, Ed, I disagree with that. I disagree with that on two fronts. First of all, I'll tell you who I blame. I blame, what do they call that, bro? The Performance Center. What's it called?
The Performance Center.
I blame the selection of wrestlers that are being chosen to go through that Performance Center, to go through NXT and then go into the WWE. Because I'm telling you, Ed, in my opinion, and I think I speak for all the casual fans, I'm not just speaking for Vince Russo, and the numbers back me up, they look like regular guys. I think casual fans want wrestlers to look like wrestlers. They want to put on a show, and they want to see wrestlers. When they're seeing guys, fat guys like Kevin Owens, when they see small guys, like a Neville, when they see people like that, to the casual fan who grew up on the WrestleMania, the Attitude Era, where the stars were stars. They were larger than life. They weren't regular guys. I don't think a regular guy is going to get over with the casual wrestling audience, and that's the audience you need, Ed, to move the needle. So here's where I get confused. All the guys at the Performance Center, they were ex-wrestlers. They've all been in the business. Terry Taylor, Triple H, Road Dogg, Billy, they know what stars are. They've been around stars. They've seen stars. It seems like now, if you're a good indie wrestler, we'll take you into NXT, and then when you go to the WWE, we don't understand why you're not over. Vince McMahon used to tell us over and over and over again, Ed, if you want to be a star, you gotta look like a star. Here's the perfect case in point, bro. That Ascension came up, and the Ascension compared themselves to LOD and Demolition. That's the only one you can compare that team to. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. These were two boys that were comparing themselves to real stars and real wrestlers, and the comparison was they look like boys compared to these guys. So my fault is, who are we bringing in that are supposed to be the next big guys to turn this business around? I mean, bro, let's face it, Ed, the two most over guys in the WWE are Brock Lesnar and John Cena. Nobody's close. Who from NXT looks like these guys?
Well, nobody really looks like those two guys. John Cena and Brock Lesnar are both freaks of nature, and Brock Lesnar, one of the reasons why he is so over is because he is so legit. He's the real deal. He's not a character, even though he is a character, but he is the real deal, and that's why he's so over. Cena is over because he's been the man for over 10 years now, and there's nobody like him, and there's not going to be another one like him for years and years and years. These other guys that are coming up, yeah, they're not Randy Savage, but you know what? By the same token, maybe things are changing a little bit, and maybe it's a matter of we don't believe in those crazy larger-than-life characters as much anymore, and we're looking for something new, something hats on, and I think that the focus on the ring work is part of it. Now, you say that the mainstream audience, the casual fan, hasn't been tuning in and has been tuning out, and I agree with you. But it's a testament to the fact that for the past 10, 15 plus years, WWE has been conditioning the audience to not care about what happens on the main roster. They do that by the half-baked ideas creatively. They do it by not following through ideas. They do it through setting up big swerves and changes and then ultimately disappointing with the payoff. So now it's finally starting to pay off that people are saying, it's World Wrestling Entertainment. I'm not that entertained anymore. And knowing by their track record, I'm not going to get invested emotionally in what's going on because I know it's going to ultimately be a disappointment. So now couple that with the fact that they don't have these Superman stars waiting in the wings to just bring eyeballs onto the show, and they're having a problem and they're losing viewers. Last week, the SmackDown show, there's tons of tarps down over the audience to cover up the sections that they didn't fill. We're 3,000 seats short of selling out last Monday night in Chicago, which is one of the hot markets. But people don't care because they've been conditioned to not care anymore. The thing with NXT is you're reconnecting with an audience that is once again passionate about the product. And if you can parlay that into something on the main roster, then you're going to be doing something. But you're not going to be doing it by taking guys who are over in NXT, and granted, it's not the same stage, but taking them over in NXT, and then essentially, like with the Ascension, dumbing down their delivery, doubling down their execution and their character, because the way that they were brought out on the main roster was a cartoony version of what they had been in NXT. Am I saying these guys are the Road Warriors? No, I'm not saying that the Road Warriors, but that was a comparison that WWE put on them. That, you know as well as I do, these guys don't go out there and say anything unless they're told or given permission to say it. So that's the way that they were packaged, and they were packaged to fail as a result of that. So yeah, when you have creative that's like that, the numbers are going to go down. So what I'm saying is, take the thing that's working and sink your teeth into that and come up with something, come up with the next new thing in the industry. When we were doing it, it was the Attitude Era, and it was focusing on going over the top and edgy and pushing the envelope and a lot more backstage than they had ever done before. We've been there. We've done that. Now we need something else, and I don't know if necessarily going back to that will work, because again, they've been trying. I've noticed the past few weeks they've been trying to do more storytelling over the course of the show, and they've been having more scenes, but I don't think it's working. They're trying, but it's not working, because I don't think they know how to do it anymore.
And why get hot at me?
I'm not getting hot.
Okay.
Am I getting hot?
Bro,
Okay.
Ed, can I listen? Can I break down something very elementary to you? Ed, I tell everybody this. I'm not kidding you, and you know that. I tell you this all the time. Why are you picking your nose? I'm about to say.
I'm wiping my nose.
Bro, I'm about to say you're the smartest man I've ever met, and you're sitting there picking your nose now. So you just completely killed the whole buildup I was about to give you.
Well, that's because it's a different time.
Okay, all right. Ed, listen to me. You're the most intelligent man I know. That's a shoot. I'm not even kidding you, bro. Can we look at logic for a second? I'm a very logical guy. I always go back to logic. Let's look at logic for a second, okay? All right, Ed. The Attitude Era, okay? We know what pay-per-view buys were doing at that time, okay? Bro, of course, there was no MMA. That hadn't yet come into play. I think you and I can both agree now, the MMA market, the MMA has literally killed the wrestling pay-per-view market. And, my whole thing was, if I'm going to pay to see a fight, I'm going to pay to see a real fight. We know wrestling's not real. So if I want to see a fight, I'm going to pay to see a real fight. All of a sudden, the pay-per-view numbers in MMA went through the freaking roof, and we saw what happened to the numbers in wrestling. Is there some validity to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Well, here's the deal, Ed. This is what I don't understand. This is where I think a mistake is being made in logic. If that's the case, right? Why would the WWE and NXT, why would they put the emphasis on the fake fight? Everybody knows the fight is fake. If they want to see a real fight, they'll watch MMA. Why is the emphasis being put on the fake fight rather than the concentration being on what wrestling is and what wrestling was from day one? From day one, wrestling was entertainment with characters and storylines. That's what separates it from MMA. The fights aren't real, but we're not going to put the focus on the fake fights. We're going to put the focus on what wrestling is and what MMA isn't. So here's my concern. Putting the focus on the wrestling at NXT, my concern is that the wrestling as a whole is turning itself into a niche market. If you don't like fake fights, then you're not a wrestling fan. And to me, that's a very small niche market. Bro, we can go on and on and on about 13,000 people at the Barclays Center. The fact of the matter is there are 7 million people less watching on Monday nights. So
and that's a testament. That's a testament to what I was saying about the past 15 years of them conditioning the audience to not give a crap. That's a long-term thing that we're seeing paying off now, where the audiences are falling off. But again, it comes back to the creative. It comes back to what they're doing with these guys. And yeah, they've gotten away from the storytelling that was what both interests you and I and got us into wrestling. But that's because, and me, they don't know how to do it anymore. They forget how to do it and how to make it work. So what they're doing is they're focusing on the one thing that is working, and that's what they're doing in NXT. And I think we're going to see some adjustments to the way that the main roster product is eventually, but they haven't made that adjustment with the main roster. They're still entertained, but the problem is they're not being entertaining. So that's why the audience is going away, whereas the audience for NXT is enjoying it. Now, here's another thing. Yeah, NXT, they sold out the Barclays Center, and they sold out the next night, and they sold out the pay-per-view, and they sold out Raw the next night. So you can say that they piggybacked on to that weekend. But I'll tell you this, if that's such a niche product, if in our day, back when we were booking during the Attitude Era, think about this. Remember Super Astros? Remember that? You want to talk about a niche product? It was their first attempt to try and hit the Hispanic market. If we had done that, like a night at the Barclays Center of Super Astros the night before the pay-per-view, which is the night before Raw, and if we were doing 3 nights, we could have filled it for the pay-per-view and Raw. We would have had 700 people there for a Super Astros taping because the product wasn't over and there wasn't that passion for the product. So I don't think that you can just write it off and say, well, it's just because the popularity of the main product has bled over into NXT. I don't think that's the case at all.
Bro, I'm not saying that at all, and bro, I don't want. Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from 13,000 people at the Barclays Center. But my point is, when you look at 13,000 compared to 7 million, something's wrong there, bro. And I don't think those 7 million that have gone bye are attracted. Like the 13,000 that were at the Barclays Center because of the wrestling.
Yeah, maybe not. But again, I don't think that the wrestling is turning people off. I think it's the lack of creativity and the lack of their storylines working over, like I said, the past 15 years that's turning people off. People are finally saying, you know what? I don't have to watch this, and I don't enjoy this. So why do I bother watching it? I keep up on it just to keep up on the product because I go on, podcasts like this and other ones. And I'm hoping that it'll get better. But if I was just a fan at this point, I would have shut off Raw a long time ago. But I'm still sticking with it. I'm hoping they'll do. And I'm enjoying seeing, I'm hoping to see them do good things with some of the NXT talent that I like as they come up to the main roster.
And, I hear you, but like here's like my overall, like the bottom line with me. This is me. This is personally me. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying right or wrong, but Ed, I very, very, very rarely do conventions, right? But I went to do one a couple of weeks ago because it was with that kayfabe commentaries, Sean Oliver, great guy, the whole 9 yards. So I went to do it with him, bro. I'm in a convention center in New York, okay? And Ed, when there's a wrestler in the vicinity, a former wrestler, he sticks out like a sore thumb. He does not look like anybody else. Bob Backlund sticks out, okay? Nikolai Volkov, sticks out. They look like like you could. They'd walk through an airport and that guy's special. That guy does something special. They look like somebody. There's presence. There's an aura. And keep in mind, bro, I'm not just picking on NXT. I was there for TNA for a very long time when these young talents were coming up, okay? But see, bro, I guess that's the problem I'm having. It's the it factor with me, bro. And it goes back to what Vince McMahon says. If you want to be a star, you have to look like a star. I don't think these guys look like stars. I don't think Kevin Owens, looks like a star. And I think I speak for all the casual fans that we're tuning into wrestling because we want to see stars. We want to see something that's bigger than life. We don't want to believe that we may be able to take half the guys on the show. I think that's how the majority of casual fans feel. So, that's why I think it goes beyond the creative, because I don't think a lot of these guys look like wrestlers. And I think, again, to the casual audience, they're never going to get over. And without that audience, wrestling is never going to do numbers like that again.
Well, I don't think wrestling is ever going to do numbers like that again. I think it was lightning in a bottle, and we really capitalized on it. But I think it's going to, no, especially not as long as Raw is 3 hours, and then you've got another 2 hours of SmackDown, then you got an hour of main event, then you got maybe a network special this week, you got a pay-per-view next week. It's just, there's way too much product out there. It's supply and demand, and there's way more supply than there is demand. Back when we were doing it, we had a 2-hour Raw, maybe a Sunday Night Heat, and that was it every week. And the people were hungry for it. They were starving for more. Now, nobody's starving for it. Nobody watches Raw and then goes, I can't wait for next week when the show is over. They say, my God, thank God that's over, because it's a chore nowadays. And wrestling fans are going to try and stay on top of it. They're going to try, because they want to be watching in case something cool happens, until they finally say, that's it, I'm done, I'm tapping out. So, yeah, I don't think it will reach those numbers again, because, as you know, it is a different time these days. But it is true. It is a different time. If you look at ratings for the top rated weekly show on network TV nowadays versus 15 years ago, the numbers will be very different. There's smaller numbers these days because there is more. It's everything. The audience is more spread out, so it'll be even harder to find a big swell in the numbers for wrestling. Also, don't forget, back in the day, we didn't have DVRs, you didn't have video on demand, and all these other ways to get the product. So it was a matter of, if you wanted to watch wrestling, you had to be sitting your ass in front of the TV when it was on, and people made a point of doing that, and it caught on. But now it's different, and because of that, there's not the demand for the supply, because people can get whatever they want whenever they wanted it. Nowadays, you want to watch any match in the world, you can just go on YouTube and type it and probably find it. Back then, it didn't exist. YouTube didn't even exist back then. So, people, there was much more of a rabid fan base because they wanted more and more and more. They've got that more and more and more now, so now they're not as rabid because they don't have to be. Everything's at their fingertips, so it's a lot easier.
Well, Ed, the WWE, the state of the WWE, is a whole other show. As a matter of fact, we're going to bring that over to VinceRussoBrand.com. We're going to discuss that next. I wanted to solely do NXT with you here because WrestlingInc.com is really more internet related. And everybody, on the internet are fans of NXT. That's why I wanted to have this discussion here. But we're going to finish it over on VinceRussoBrand.com. But Ed, listen, I'm glad we had the discussion. I'm glad I have an understanding. I mean, bro, listen, I'm old school Italian. You're old school Italian. I might be a little bit more stubborn than you. You might be a little more open. I think that's what the difference is. But I clearly hear what you're saying, and I clearly understand. And listen, the bottom line with me is, hey, man, if you enjoy NXT, that's great. Watch NXT. I'm always constantly just thinking of ways of how are they going to get the masses back? How are they going to get back the people that once tuned into wrestling and are no longer tuning in it? And I just don't think they're going to get them back through wrestling.
Well, I mean, you may be right. Maybe they won't get it back to wrestling, but I can tell you this: they're certainly not going to get them back if they don't start delivering. And that's the problem. It's all tease and no delivery. And the fans, like I said, the fans taught to not expect anything to come of it, or not to put their eggs all in that basket, because
because almost guaranteed whatever they're building up to is going to ultimately be a disappointment. So that's the problem I think with it. But yes,
we're different. We look at these things a little differently, but I understand exactly what you're saying because it is frustrating. It's a very frustrating time to be a fan of the main roster these days. It seems like every time I turn around, I'm going, why are they doing this? Why aren't they doing X or Y? So yeah, I'll stop babbling. We'll go over to the other thing and talk about that.
Well, there you have it, everybody. If you want to hear the rest of the discussion with, concerning WWE and only WWE and Raw and what's happening right now, you can go over to VinceRussoBrand.com and see that interview there. Ed, thank you so much for joining us today, having this NXT discussion. I'll always respect your opinion, and that's why I wanted to hear it here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been way too long. Let's do it again. Hey, let's do it in about 30 seconds. What do you say?
You got it, bro. I'll call you right back. Ed Ferrara, everybody.